When it comes to parent support, there's a lot of different things to consider and to make things work right for you in your studio. And we all have a different threshold for where the right level of parent support lies. Some of us want parents to sit in on every single lesson. Some of us want them to just check in occasionally. Some of us really don't want them to be too involved at all, especially if we're teaching older students, or we know that we've had parents who get over involved in the past. So, what is the right level of support for you, and how can you get parents to actually do what you want them to do, to be as involved as you want them to be? For me, it all starts at the very start, and I know this is discouraging maybe to hear if you have parents who are currently in your studio who are not at the right level of support, who you need to adjust things with. So we will get to that area later, but let's start at the beginning. Let's say we have a new student. How can we get things off to the right start? For me, it all starts at the very first meeting. So if you have a brand new student coming up, I want to encourage you to really, really think about the impression you give and the involvement that you expect from parents, that you show that you expect from parents right at the first meeting. Everything you need to do at that first meeting, by the way, if you're not doing a first meeting with parents, please start doing them. It is so crucial to have a meeting before you start formal lessons. You can call it an interview, a meet and greet, a visit, a tour, doesn't matter, but some kind of meeting before you actually get your official start with lessons is crucial here. And at that meeting, you need to be clear and concise, and you need to catch red flags as they come up as well. You don't need to pounce on anyone, but you need to have your ear tuned for the things parents are saying that might be red flags, right? Has anyone got any red flags to share? Please do add them into the comments if you do. Common red flags that come up for you at that first meeting, in those first encounters with parents. For me, one of them is, I just want to see if this is for him, or I just want to see if he's musical, or I just want to see if he has a knack for it. I want to see if this sticks. And the truth is, the reason that's a red flag is it won't stick if that's their attitude, because they're not going to buy a good instrument, get involved. They don't think that they need to support practice in order for it to happen. What they're revealing behind that statement is, I think my child should be motivated to practice all by themselves. Yes, Julie, exactly. We just want to try it out. That's the same sort of character as I'm getting at here as well, with the, we want to see if he's musical, we want to see if he takes to it. We just want to try it out. When parents say that, it often it does let us know that underlying that is, I think that kids either are musical or aren't, or I think that kids either suit piano or don't. And in most cases, the ones that suit piano are the ones whose parents help them practice. So it doesn't mean we're going to say, no, that child cannot start in our studio, but it does mean we need to put in extra effort with that parent to make sure that they get off to the right start in our studio, that they understand these things. And I will say to them pretty bluntly, although kindly, if like all children are musical, so if they come with that, I say absolutely all children are musical. The difference is if you get that practice routine in place or if you don't. So I'm quite straightforward about it. And that's what I mean about being clear and concise. Too often we kind of tiptoe around things that need to be said straight down the camera lens, as it were, as I'm looking at a camera. They need to be said more clearly, more to the point, and yes, maybe a little bit more bluntly, but with kindness behind it. So we need to catch those red flags right at the start, and we need to explain our expectations for parents right at that first meeting. Following on from that is this crucial period, which I would call the onboarding period. This is where parents are just getting to know your studio, and this is where they're the most malleable, honestly. This is where you can train parents in how they approach piano, how they approach music lessons. This is where parents learn what kind of piano parent they're going to be. They become who they're going to be. And honestly, it's really hard to change this later. It can be done, it does happen, but for the most part, the level of support that you establish right now in the first, say, semester, like 3-4 months, that is what's going to continue for the most part. So treat it with respect and put in that extra effort. Yes, you're going to take more time with new families. It's going to be more admin time, more emails back and forth, more support, more, couple of minutes at the end of the lesson where you chat with the mum. And that's important and it's valuable and it's worth doing. Because if you establish that right at the start, it continues, honestly. That's the trend that I've seen, and I'm sure many of you have seen in your studios. Let me know if you've seen that in the comments. Have you ever seen a parent who changed radically year upon year? Or is it more common that the parents in your studio stick at pretty much the level of support, no matter what you say, after the first few months? Now, a lot of this does require some extra work, but a lot of it can also be automated, right? So this is where putting in an email sequence, a series of emails that goes out automatically to new parents, is a great way to cover some of these bases. It won't do all the work for you, but it can make it more likely that every parent in your studio has a similar experience. And that's what we're looking for here. We don't want to support some parents really, really well and others not at all. And we don't do that intentionally when we do it, right? We do it by mistake. Laurie said, what do you say as far as how to set up a practice routine? Parents always ask, how much should they practice? Okay, so I answer this in quite a long-winded way for my parents, and this is in this onboarding stage, so it's a perfect question for right now. During that stage, at the first meeting and in emails, this is reiterated. What I want them to do is set up the practice routine exactly as you've said there, Laurie. So I want that routine to be established. I don't care how long they practice every day, and I'm quite clear about that with parents. I tell them the most important thing right now is to establish a routine and make this fit into your daily lives. If that means that some days practice is only 1 minute, I do not care. It's about getting to the piano at that same point in your day. So in terms of how to establish that routine, I give them some ideas. Okay, you do it after your after school snack, you do it before breakfast in the morning, you do it, right? So you're tying it to some other activity that happens every day. Now, when they do say, how long should it be? I say, don't worry about it in the beginning. But if you want some kind of a rough guideline, 2.5 to 3 times their age is a good general measure. It doesn't work for every occasion, and I definitely don't want you to set up a timer, but that gives you some kind of a gauge. If they're spending less than that, they're probably not getting through everything on their list, their assignment list. If they're spending a lot more than that, we need to look at the pacing because I might be piling too much onto their plate. Or maybe they're wasting some of that time. Could be either or, right? Okay, tell me what you do in that onboarding period, the first few months of lessons. How do you establish the routine with parents? Julie, why no timer? I believe that timers are the opposite of what would establish good practice. Okay, here's my reasoning. If you have a timer on, your focus is entirely on putting in that time. That's what it's training you to do. So if you say, I'm going to practice 15 minutes every day, put on the timer, and the focus is on running out the clock. That is what your goal is. And that is the wrong goal for your practice time. I want even little kids to think, if I can get this work done, if I can make the progress I want to make in 10 minutes, that's awesome. That's not a bad thing. That's a very good thing, right? It's about quality, exactly, not quantity. And that's a difficult thing to get across to kids. But when you have something like a timer, you are sending that message that it does matter that you spend this time, and that it doesn't matter as much what you do. So we're always focused on goals each week, goals for the next lesson, goals for that practice session, and then practice strategies down the track. But right at the start, I don't want to be setting that frame of reference that is all about time, because that doesn't matter. I'm someone, as a practicer, as a musician myself, who practices in tiny little spurts. That's how I practice. And some other people, my husband just recently started learning some pieces. Might be embarrassed for me to tell you. No, he won't. But he'll sit there for like 2 hours. And like, that's not, I would never do that. But that's great. But he'll do that in one giant session, and then he won't practice for days. And, maybe that's not ideal. I would come back to the piano again and again, 10 minutes here, 20 minutes there. And so I want students to find their own pace with that as well. And the practice timer just sends the wrong message right at the start. It's all about routine. So in that onboarding sequence with my new parents, I'm talking about their support of that routine, how this is their job to find the right spot in their family schedule, and how I am here to help. I'm sending them these emails and talking to them regularly about this stuff because I want to be a support. And too often we leave it till down the track, and then we come at them and say, is practice happening? Like, if you've managed to fit practice in, and it sounds accusatory. It sounds like they've done something wrong, when actually they didn't even know what they were supposed to be doing in the first place, which is so harsh, right? So I want to be that support, and I want to get across to them that I am there, that they should come to me if they are having trouble establishing a practice routine, if things are not going well, if their child is kicking up a fuss. But honestly, if parents do this right at the start, and I tell them this too, if they do it at the start, no one ever kicks up a fuss, at least not for years to come, because it becomes this standard thing that you do. Whereas if you leave it, that's where the tantrums happen, because you're altering something that they have known to be one way. After that initial period, as things progress, I want to be giving them those concrete tools for practice, and I want to be giving those to parents as well as to students. So I'm hoping in the first semester just to get that routine happening. If we've achieved that, then I can start to think about, okay, what are they actually doing during this time? What goals can we set, and what strategies can we employ? This is where something like practice plays is great. So that's a set. Members, if you haven't checked it out, it's in the library, isn't it? I should check that. But practice plays are these cards, coming out soon if they're not there already, that have strategies on them. And they're strategies like ones you will have heard me talk about before, which are like crossing the river. Yeah, no, maybe we haven't released that there. That's something to look forward to. Anyway, they're about specific step-by-step strategies, and I want to get one of them across to students at a time. So crossing the river is where you put 3 things on the left, and then you try a section, and if you play it correctly, you move an object to the right side of the piano, and then if you get it wrong, you move it back. So you're aiming to get 3 in a row correctly, but the visual of crossing the river is great. And we've mentioned that on previous chats, so you can go back and check those out if you haven't already. Now, we want to build these up gradually over time, and we want to involve the parent in that process. Depending on the child's age and depending on what the child is like, I don't necessarily want them to be sitting there dictating exactly what their child does, because we want them to build up those independent habits. So I send out an email to them which is more on the lines of, if you hear your child playing perfect things, I call it the messy practice email. If you hear them playing perfect renditions of their piece start to finish all the time, they are not practicing. So we need to remedy that. And I give them a list of questions that they can use to go in and say, what did your teacher want you to work on there? Which part of that is tricky? Stuff like that, so that they have prompts to use, so that they're guiding a little bit in terms of, we need to be working on something properly here, but not dictating exactly what their child does, right? Great ideas being added into the chat there. Thank you so much. Anya said students receive a practice sheet every week to mark their assignments daily, up to 5-6 days per week. A small incentives for 3 days a week and a bigger one for 5-6 days a week. Yeah, so it depends on the situation. We all have different systems, but involving parents in that is really what's crucial. No matter what incentive system is in place, no matter what marking you have, if the parents aren't involved and the kid is, say, under 10, it's so unlikely that they are going to do anything with that time. And it makes it that much more likely that the child of the musical parent, the parent who studied music, succeeds, and the child of the non-musical parent doesn't succeed because their parents did not already know this stuff and they weren't trained by us. A crucial thing about these practice techniques that I'm talking about is to give them names. So I called it crossing the river. That little fact of having a name and a label for that makes it so much more likely that they will actually do it. Because you can keep referring to it. Because you can say, okay, now let's do crossing the river with X. You can keep building that vocabulary, and it actually makes a difference in terms of whether they're likely to actually follow through with that practice strategy or not. Giving it a label is important. So no matter what your favorites are, come up with a little catchy name for it and use that in your lessons and in your assignment notes and with parents. Okay, so going forward from there, it's all about coaching parents, informing them about the benefits that are coming to them. Okay, so every time you send an email, this goes for everything, you're sending it from a place of, this is why this is good for you. So without talking down to them, without admonishing them for not practicing, you're explaining how this is helping their child get the value from lessons that they're putting the investment into. If you do have too much or too little, it might be time to rebalance. And I would love to hear from you guys about strategies for that, whether you've had parents who were too involved or not involved enough, that you managed to rebalance, and how did you achieve that? Okay, awesome ideas about practice sheets and all that kind of stuff in the chat, which I think is fantastic. Just want to make sure that we're not missing the crucial step. My point today is about those parents. It's about involving them, because no matter, this is something I see a lot, right? We look for the latest and greatest assignment sheet. We look for the most colourful practice notebook. We look for a great app like Tanara, which is great and I'm using it now. We look for that, but we're missing the point, which is the parent is not supporting the practice at home, and therefore none of these things are going to fix that fact, because they don't engage the parent. The problem was not that the student wasn't engaged, the problem was that the parent wasn't engaged, right? So above all, for parents to become involved in their child's piano practice, I think they need 3 things. They need to feel competent, and this is the one where for non-musical parents, it is crucial that you get this one across. They need to feel like they know what they're doing, and that's where my onboarding emails come across, because I'm giving them clear and concise information that is really just about them being an adult. They don't have to be a magical musician. They don't have to read music. It's really just about being an adult with adult ears and adult organizational skills. And when they understand that, they feel more confident and competent going into that scenario. They're not going into it thinking, my child knows about this and I know nothing about it, so I should leave it up to them. Because they know about that organisation side that we need them to be involved in. I appreciate having a discussion about parent goals and how best to support them and students. Thank you, Teresa, for that thought. And Kathy said, we need to make it so that they don't feel like it's an extra thing for them to do. They feel very overwhelmed these days. Yeah, for sure. They need to feel like but that's where the routine at the very start, Kathy, matters, because that's something that is a non-negotiable part of who they are as a family then, rather than something we're adding on now. When we come to it later, it is so much tougher. So they need to feel competent. I also think they need to feel appreciated, which goes back to your point, Kathy. We need to let them know that we are there for them and that we see what they're doing. Every year at my recital, I always give a shout out to parents. I think it's really important to take that moment to say, this is not just about these kiddos who are getting up here and performing, and they're wonderful and that's great, but it's about all of you in the audience who have encouraged them to practice, who have driven them to lesson, who have made sure they remember their books. It's about all of you. And I always say that at our annual concert in the spring, because it's so true. They need to feel appreciated. And the last thing I think they need is to feel that it is worthwhile. In other words, to feel that they're actually achieving something. And that again, that speech I gave at the concert, that's what I'm emphasizing. All those little minutes that you put in, they led to this. This is awesome. And it's not just great because your child can play this piece. It's great because they learned grit and determination, how to stick with something and how to work hard at things, not just music. Not that music isn't a valuable goal in and of itself, but they are also learning all these other skills. So emphasizing that as well is so important. Kathy says, yes, I thank them all the time for their involvement. That's awesome, Kathy. Yeah, we definitely want to be appreciating what parents are doing because they do have a big role to play. Keep adding your thoughts about all of this stuff to do with parent involvement in lessons. I love reading these. We're going to switch over and look at a couple of websites next. We skipped this last week, so we're back to it today. And we're going to explore a couple of websites. So I've picked these out at random. If you're not aware, by the way, and you want to apply for a web review, we have a post in the announcements section of the Vibrant Music Studio Teachers Facebook group. So that's where you need to go if you want to have your website reviewed. I pick at random. There's no guarantees, and there are a lot of people writing in there to get their web review. But yeah, post it there and you never know. It is totally random, as I said. So, are we ready to look at these websites? Let's do it. We always learn so much from this. Let me just do that so it's not so confusing. Okay, this is Applause Piano Studio. Now, up the top here we have a hello bar that says, welcome, Applause is proud to announce the reopening of the studio September 14th, 2020. Please see the section regarding COVID-19. So that did jump out to me. However, I would say it's not a guarantee that it will. So I just wanted to mention that right off the bat. If that is the only information about the whole COVID situation, I would rethink that. I think you should probably have an announcement here too. Not a doom and gloom negative stuff, but just yep, we're open kind of sign there so that I definitely see it, because a lot of people don't even register those hello bars anymore. The strips at the top of websites, because they're usually something promotional or cookies. And especially if you're in the EU, you just get constant cookie messages taking over your screen. So they might just ignore that. It's very likely. Now, apart from that, I really like the colouring here. I like the simplicity. Pre-piano curriculum, private piano lessons, and then summer session. I would really like to see more definitely your students on these rather than these photos, especially this one is very stocky, you know, and has nothing to do with summer or your studio very specifically. So my first thought when I land here is simple, clean, not a ton of personality if I'm honest. If I'm just looking for, you know, I'm looking for piano lessons, I definitely think this is a viable option and that's awesome. But I wouldn't be, it wouldn't stand out from the pack necessarily. Okay, so let's say we go, and also there's no call to action. Yeah, and we don't count this. So we need a call to action here telling me where to go and what to do. Learn more doesn't count. It's too weak as a call to action. We need something much stronger that says sign up, register now. Okay, we could count this. It's not bold enough though, and it needs to be center right here. Register now. If we do go there though, we get the prices. Again, more very stock images. One is even repeated, so I would rethink those images. Maybe you don't need images at all. Map is great. This is slick. That looks good. And the programs. So I think everything is looking good. The main thing is that call to action and the images. It's a bit slow to load, but that might be just because we're on here. Okay, there's a lot of pages that have this format and it looks more like blog posts perhaps. It's a bit of an odd format because you see if I change my screen size it might be a different number even if it isn't. The brick style, masonry style format is a bit funny for that. I might rethink that and just list them in one column. Other than that I think it's looking good. Look, I think the main thing we could fix here are the images and the call to action. We'll look at one more today. I chose this one because it was completely different. So, what do we think of this one? Give me your first impressions. Let me know what you think. I think for a certain type of student, this is going to stand right out to them. Beats from the core, purpose-driven coaching. I think that's awesome. So, right away I can see what type of studio it is, and if it's not for me I'm going to click away, and I think that's great. What I don't have right away is a call to action, so I think you should rethink that and add one in. Other than that, I think it's a clear message. It shows off what you're doing, and yeah, okay, cool. So you're showing that you're teaching online. It's very clear that that's already happening. Yeah, and the vibe is very consistent. So I think that's great. You've got awesome testimonials here. That's awesome. Okay, that's great. I'm going to go to programs. Yeah, I'm just not getting a call to action. That's really the only criticism I have here so far is a clear button to tell me what to do next. Apart from this, I don't count that. Again, hello bars. Teacher program. Okay. So it's for teachers? Okay, so make it a bit clearer who you're aiming at, and if it's both, make that clear as well, and have sort of side by side this or that. But that would be the main thing, is I don't know what route I'm supposed to take through your site, but I think it's very clear what type of teacher you are, and that is fantastic. That's a great step. So well done to both of our websites today. Websites, don't know why I said it like that. Well done to both of those teachers for volunteering and for putting together great sites. They're both really solid. Hopefully those tips will be helpful for them and for you if you're putting together your own site. And as I said, you can request a web review in the Vibrant Music Studio Teachers group on Facebook. I mentioned at the start that my mug might be black by the end, and it is almost black, so that is fun. Just checking in with the chat here, guys. Thank you all for for adding your comments. Don't know what happened there. Yes, great comment, Anya. The kids would not be here if it wasn't for the parents. It's it's obvious in some ways, but it's so important to state it. Oh, that's rough, yeah, in terms of awkward situations, Laurie. So she said, I was showing my student who couldn't attend our holiday recital an amazing and fun duet that I played with another student. The dad asked me if that was a good use of lesson time. He would get quite a glare from me for that comment, if I'm honest. But then I would compose myself in that brief glare and just get back to him and say, yes, it is because it's demonstrating X, Y, Z, It's always a good use of lesson time. But yeah, that sounds like an awkward situation. Thank you for sharing that. Julie said, I really want my parents to be more involved at home, especially with scheduling, to make sure that the practice is happening. I'm fortunate to have several parents who are fantastic at this. Yes, and hopefully today's tips will help you to make more parents who are fantastic at this. Yeah, it's tough when you have that one family, isn't it? Sometimes I feel like we just have to accept it with grace and just say, okay, am I still going to work with this student? If so, I'm just going to take them where they are every week. If practice is just off the table, we just have to work with what's actually happening. It's so tempting as a teacher to go, but if you just to yourself, and it doesn't get us anywhere. So on that note, I hope this chat helped you to support your parents better in your studio. We will be back here again next week with more parent stuff. I'm going to be talking about how to host a parent workshop in your music studio. I'm going to be hosting my own piano parent workshop online this year. So I'll detail exactly what I'm going through in that, how I'm doing it, how I encourage parents to attend, and what content is in that workshop so that you can try it out for yourself. So hopefully you can join me back here for that one. Before you leave today, make sure to hit the like button on the video and subscribe so that you get that next chat as soon as we go live. I'll see you guys then.